friends, family, screenagers, wizards, witches, everyone and everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Canon, your favorite movie podcast, the only movie podcast providing you with a list of the most essential movies ever made. My name is Raph. We've got another amazing episode lined up for you today. We're going to be talking Harry Potter, so get pumped. Really looking forward to this conversation that we're going to be having about Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone. I don't know which one we're going to go with for the course of this episode, but we will figure it out along the way. Joining me to talk Harry Potter and Sorcerer's Philosopher's Stone, I've got two very special guests. I've got the Loomises. How do I pronounce your guys' last name?
It's Loomis. We've been going Lumai is the plural.
The Lumai.
Yeah.
So that's an acceptable plural. We'll also accept Loomises. Either way is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to think of like a fun way to pronounce it without like being totally offensive to you guys and your name. But Hannah, Brian, Lumai, thank you guys for joining. How's it going? Welcome to the Canon.
Hello. Thanks for having
Hi.
us on. We're really excited to talk about this movie.
Oh, yeah, we are. And the book. And the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
All of it.
Spoiler alert. We're Potter people.
Mm.
Well, I am. Brian put a ring on it, so therefore he loves Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It's in the wedding vows.
I married into Harry Potter, essentially. Though I had read and watched before.
Sure.
But now you're fully in.
Now I'm fully in.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I love it. That's amazing. That's how it works. So we're going to be talking the movie itself. We'll probably touch on the book. We're going to be talking about the Wizarding world at large because it's impossible to not talk about all of that stuff when we're talking about this movie, its cultural impact, and all of that good stuff around it. But before we get into Harry Potter discussion, you guys are joining me from, well, I guess not from, but you guys have your own movie podcast that I think we should talk about. We should tell the folks about, tell all of our lovely screenagers why they should add What a Pick to their list, their rotation of movie podcasts. So what is What a Pick? How did it get started? What are you guys doing over there?
Sure. So we started What a Picture about a year and a half ago. We had the idea of watching through all of the Sight and Sound top 100 greatest films of all time, and then sort of dared each other like to do a podcast about it while we were at it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're doing. For listeners who aren't familiar with the Sight and Sound list, it is essentially a poll of critics that's been going since the 1950s. They release it every 10 years. And the 2022 list is the most recent one. They really expanded the critics they were polling and came up with the list changed a lot from 2012 to 2022 in some very interesting ways. So we were interested to see like what has that change looked like, and there were a bunch of movies on it that we hadn't seen. So like how can we engage with these movies a little more? Compared to the canon, it skews maybe more international. So you've got probably about like 35 to 40 movies that you'd consider like English language, and then the rest are French, Japanese, Italian, a bunch of others. So we've really expanded like the types of movies that we're watching. It's maybe more of like what you'd think of as the cinephile list.
Dare I say pretentious?
Of the lists out there. Dare you say pretentious? And so, yeah, it's been really fun. We're really excited to come on and talk about a movie that's maybe a little bit more mainstream for this. But that's what we're doing over there, and we're through almost 80 movies now of the 100. So we've got a backlog of episodes for those interested in watching through or who have seen a good bit of that list. We've got podcasts for almost every one of them now,
Yeah.
and we're going to probably wrap up by January or February here with the list. And
So
then,
like a 2-year project.
yeah.
I think also one of the big reasons, at least for me doing it, is I had heard of like not even half of these movies before.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of us feel like we need there's some sort of barrier to entry to watching any sort of film, particularly foreign film. And sometimes you just say something's good because people, quote unquote, smarter or more qualified might say it's good.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of our discussion is around identifying understandable and universal themes, things that maybe all people are thinking and feeling, and making movies
Yeah.
not through our commentary, but just through discussion and talking about its effect on us. Making movies that are really for everybody, even if they're in Russian. And
Yeah.
you're like, I don't understand Russian. Oh, this is black and white. This film
Yeah.
angle is weird. But I think it's been overall to try to make more movies accessible. And then for me personally, it's definitely expanded my version or my view of what makes a movie good.
Interesting.
And it's been a lot of fun. I can't believe it'll be 2 years when we're finished.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't heard of Sight and Sound until like
Mhm.
3 weeks before we filmed or recorded our first episode. So, but we've been kind of subtly daring each other that we should do a podcast for
Yeah.
a while now. And then
We love to talk.
we love
Yeah.
to talk. We thought if anything, we'll capture our voices so in 30 years our children can listen to how nerdy their parents were. So
That's
the goal.
the dream, right?
Mhm.
That's what we're all looking for.
Absolutely.
I love it. The show is great. Your conversations are amazing. You guys make like really complex, in-depth, emotionally layered and rich movies, like super accessible for us normal folk, which I think is really cool. Obviously you guys are both like very fun to listen to. You have like great banter together. What's the plan for like when you do end up finishing the 100 movies? Are you going to keep going? Are you going to like pivot the show in any sort of way? Like, I don't want you guys to disappear from, the podcasting world completely. So we
Rough,
got to know what's next.
yeah, your guess is as good as ours. We've tossed around a couple of things that more just seem like jokes.
That's always how it starts.
It's
It always
always how it
starts as a
starts.
joke. And then you're
Well,
like, wait,
Brian's
how
got
did we
this.
get here?
Brian's got this. I don't know exactly what you called it, but essentially it's like we each pick a movie, like take turns picking movies that we think the other person will absolutely hate. And so it's just a back and forth of like film chicken.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a game of chicken, and whoever gives up first of I can't watch any more movies that I hate
Yeah.
loses.
See,
Yeah.
I've also been I've been reading a lot this year, and I've been reading a lot of like celebrity memoirs. And so right now I'm in the middle of Barbara Streisand's 48-hour long audiobook
Oh, wow.
that I'm like taking every word of it as just like nourishment. It's so good. But so now I'm like, oh crap, there are so many Barbara Streisand movies that I need to watch. So we've talked about like, taking an actor and walking through
Mhm.
chronologically, taking a director and walking through it chronologically. I think a lot of podcasts do that. Not that we can't, and not that what we do has to be novel by any means,
Mhm.
but it will still be in film. It will still be in, identifying the same themes that we love about movies or have come to love about movies as a result of the
Yeah.
Sight and Sound list, but we really don't know. I think we keep waiting for it to come to us.
Yeah.
Like at the end, it's just there's gonna be another list, maybe, or
I don't know. What
do you want to do?
100 movies, and Ralph, I'm sure you feel this, but like trying to get through like a massive list of movies feels just like a gigantic project when you're doing
Mhm.
like one movie an episode. It's like, oh my goodness, what have I committed myself to? There's so many podcasts that I need to make.
Yeah.
So it feels like a huge project, and it'd be nice to have like smaller bite-sized projects. you know?
Yeah.
We did talk about the one change we're probably going to do is go from weekly episodes to bi-weekly episodes.
Yeah.
It's just a lot, especially for Brian, who thank you, Brian. He is the planner, he's the equipment guy, he's the editor. I truly show up on Saturday mornings, which is when we record, and I'm like, wait a minute, which movie did we watch this week? Okay, I guess I can talk about that. And
that's the way
maybe
to
I
do
should
it.
be a better podcast co-host.
You do great.
That's
You do
fine.
great.
You guys
but
have
yeah.
a system that works. Yeah.
For now, yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
I'm not going to learn how to edit podcasts, but perhaps I should.
It's a skill that everyone should know. In 20
Honestly.
years, like we're all going to be editing podcasts. That's going to be the only. Those are going to be the only
way
jobs
that
available.
We can communicate to each other.
Is through podcasts.
Yeah.
we're almost there, but we're going to be all the way there in about 20 years.
It. Yeah, I would rather learn things by like snarky commentators than newspapers. You know, most of my history I learned is through podcasts. So anyway,
that's
Potter.
what we're here for. We're here to provide a public service. That's
Absolutely.
what I tell myself every day.
And honestly, talking about
this.
Harry Potter and educating the masses on Harry Potter feels like a public service.
You see, Hannah, that is a pro move right there. Everyone comes on the show. You know, I get people who do podcasting. I get people who don't do podcasting, and everyone is like, I know the way to transition from our opening banter to the movie of the day. And the way that you just took us from what it was that we were talking about and you plopped us into Harry Potter world, that was amazing. And maybe I'm giving too much of the game away right now by pointing it out, but the people deserve to know. So
well, here's the thing, Rolf, that really isn't that's not highlighting my podcasting acumen. That's more of just that I constantly transition every conversation to Harry Potter. So that's really where it comes from. I just want to talk about Harry Potter.
You're just always finding a way to
primed
to bring everything back to Harry Potter, which totally makes sense. It's something that that everyone wants to talk about. It's something that people want to hear about. It's why the people are here. It's why you guys are here. So I guess with that, we probably can get into Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone, whatever it is that we want to call it. When you guys were talking about your show and mentioning like the Sight and Sound list, it is funny, like when we talk about the canon sort of like internally at Screen Age Wasteland, the idea was always like it would be sort of like a Sight and Sound list, an AFI like top 100, but like the non-pretentious version, and really sort of like the like intro list for essential movies and like movies that you need to watch, right? Like the movies that if you are let's say we're giving this list to like a 12, 13, 14-year-old person who's like, I want to be a film fan, I want to be a movie critic, I want to be a filmmaker, whatever it is. These are the movies that you need to watch to like establish your foundation, right? It's not it's not like automatically diving into some like Ingmar Bergman stuff from the 50s or whatever, and you're like, what the hell is going on here? No, it's like, how about you watch Harry Potter first, and then this will open your doors to all of these other possibilities for like what can be done in film and like what it is that you can watch and experience and all of that good stuff. So we're bringing you guys not a step down, but sort of just like a different approach to like what we are considering to be classic movies. So with all that, Harry Potter, like you guys said, a much more mainstream example of a classic movie.
Sure.
Before we get into the movie itself, because the Harry Potter series, like book series, movie series, everything that's come after has been such a cultural just like phenomenon over the last almost 30 years. I feel like the obvious place to start is understanding like all of our relationships to Harry Potter, because we are all sort of like of the age range of people who were specifically hit with Potter mania in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
So I feel like Hannah is the biggest Harry Potter fan of the three of us. So Brian, I'm going to kick this question over to you first.
Oh, okay. Fun.
I want to hear what your like background relationship is to Harry Potter. Were you a big fan of the books growing up? Did you see this movie opening night? Like, where do you stand on all of that?
Yeah, I was not the biggest Harry Potter fan. I was not like a day of release person with Harry Potter, except for the seventh book. By the time the seventh book came out, I'd sort of like caught up to it. And I remember just devouring that book and thinking it was excellent. So, but yeah, the books more so than the movies. I'd seen some of the movies here or there. They were very ubiquitous and are very good, but I'd just not been my Harry Potter fandom hadn't reached like the level where I had to see every movie. And so, yeah, I'd seen a couple of movies here or there, and then it was when Hannah and I got married that we sat down and watched them all the way through, because it's very important to her. And yeah, I really enjoy this series overall. But that's sort of the background that I bring to it. I'd read all of the books and I'd seen some of the movies, and now I've seen all of the movies probably through at least twice, I'd say.
How do you feel about this movie in particular?
Ooh, good question. So this movie is very charming to me. I think the particularly, and it might be because of when this came out when we were growing up, and so there's something a little bit nostalgic about it, but the CGI in this,
Yeah.
although quite shoddy in places, is so charming to me. It's almost like the, great practical effects or things that you'll see where it's like, this is obviously not real, but that like artificialness adds to it in some ways, where like the Avengers Endgame or whatever, that's such, so much money has been put into that CGI. It's like the 99% CGI solution. Like, your brain can't tell a difference, but your soul can. And this like 90% solution, where your brain and soul can tell a difference, you can sort of like engage with in a different way. That's like, I know this is false in my brain, but I still really enjoy it, or I enjoy the image. And there's like a style to it as well.
It's like the opposite of the Uncanny Valley.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sort
every
of
emotion that Uncanny Valley makes you feel, it's the opposite.
Yeah. So it's very charming to me. I don't think so. I think the performances are pretty good. I think they did a great job with casting. I think it's a bit of an impossible job to ask children to carry this much exposition and difficult like explain, because you have to explain how the world works in such a way. And a lot of the best like child performances are very naturalistic, and that's just not possible with this material. So I think it runs into some difficulties there for me, but overall I do like, it's a very enjoyable watch and something that I really like overall.
I love it. Hannah, our resident Harry Potter fan, Potter person, is that the official title that we go with for someone who is
Potterhead?
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say that you're obsessed with Harry Potter? Are you a super fan? Like, where in that sort of realm would you put yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that like it's up to 30% of my identity.
Okay.
No, I mean, I read, let's see, my history. I mean, my third grade teacher read the first book to us at school. So we're talking, I mean, the first book was released in the US in 1998.
Yeah,
So
that sounds right.
she I think it was third grade. I remember where I was listening to her read it, and it was in the
Oh,
third.
wow.
Like, you know what I mean? Like that.
This is like a full like core
It's like,
memory for
yeah,
you.
it's like a
Yeah.
defining moment of my life. So I
Yeah.
remember her reading the first book and then starting the second book, but then we had to leave for summer vacation. I
Terrible.
did the Borders bookstore midnight release of the books. I did
Yeah.
the dress up for the movies at midnight with my friends. A girlfriend and I, before it was either 6 or 7 part 1, got like full. I mean, we're like late teenagers, but are wearing
Mhm.
like 12-year-old boy size Death Eater costumes with the dark mark tattoo on our arms.
Hell yeah.
And then the next day I had to go to my job at Panera Bread, and I forgot to take the giant tattoo off my forearm, and I got so many weird looks from old people. Anyway,
That is like the most like 2008 core thing I've ever heard.
Honestly, it is. I mean, like, this was just, I think that
Harry Potter to Panera Bread is
Harry
just
Potter
like
to Panera Bread.
such a specific like level of millennial
Yeah.
just life that like spans across the country.
Even better, the costume was from Party City. So like, we're really
amazing.
going like, yeah. I mean, I'm my
Full millennial
voice,
core.
yeah, my voice was hoarse from screaming and crying and clapping during the movie. I mean, I think that by itself, the story is beautiful. J.K. Rowling does such a good job of like, I don't know if you've ever watched Arrested Development, but they put in jokes that are specifically for people who are on their like 5th run through the series. J.K. Rowling does that. She does a callback of a very major plot point in book/movie 6, way back in book 2. There's just this like Easter egg type of thing going on. So the story is great, but then you add in a group of people who find so much comfort and camaraderie and friendship. And I still send memes to one of my high school girlfriends about it. Like, there is so much of like my safety and my friendships and my coming of age, where Harry Potter, similar to Taylor Swift is in the background of so many of my major moments in life. Harry Potter, the same. I'm looking at 2.5 copies of the series on my bookshelf right now. I have at least 2 puzzles. I have all the audiobooks, which I should tell you this. I listen/read Harry Potter, the entire series, at least once a year. Super fan. I remember going to the Borders midnight release of the books, and we would get 2 copies so that my dad and I could both read them. So there's also, there's also like my dad, who I adore. He's been on our podcast a couple times. We have like our nerd out things that are just me and him. And Harry Potter was one of them. Yeah. So I think that I don't know. It's so much of the good things about my life have had Harry Potter in or around or through them, that it brings me so much comfort and safety. And if my children don't like Harry Potter, I should probably start preparing myself for that now. They're allowed to like what they want to like, but it's going to be real rough if they don't like Harry Potter.
Yeah, that was actually the question that I wanted to ask. But before we talk about that, I do think that Harry Potter, for people, again, our age, sort of like younger millennials, this series, both book and film, is so significant to so many people. And it's like really cool to think about something that means so much to so many people. And like, those characters grew up with us. We grew up with those characters, right? We talk about this first movie. This came out in 2001. So I was like 10 when this came out. I was 9 or 10 years old. And by the time the 7th or 8th movie comes out, the kids in the movie the characters are 18. And as film viewers in real life, like, we are also 18, 19 years old. And the fact that like their journey mirrors our journey so closely. Like it really was like a beautiful thing to like watch that happen throughout the course of, 10 to 15 years or whatever the time period was. I think my math is
That's
like
okay.
totally off, but that's fine.
Math ain't mathin'. That's fine.
Yeah, we're talking movies. We're not here to talk math.
They don't
So-
teach math at Hogwarts. We don't have to talk about it now.
exactly.
Well, they kind of do in arithmancy, but that's not till year 3.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
But no, I think like, and I think your relationship and your experience with Harry Potter is like the experience of so many people, especially like of a specific age range. It would be interesting to know sort of what like an older demo might think of Harry Potter or like how they relate to it. Like someone who was maybe like 15 when the first book came out. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure for them it doesn't hit the same way that it does for us, right? Like they weren't dressing up for the midnight showings. They weren't going to Borders, which is also like so 2008.
Yeah, I know.
Like so amazingly 2008. But like they probably weren't going to Borders and all that stuff. But then on the flip side of that, like I think what's cool, especially about Harry Potter today, is that those people who grew up with it now have kids of their own. And the idea of like passing that fandom along to a new generation is something that's really cool. So this movie in particular, like this sort of plays well for younger audiences, maybe like 10 and under. Have you guys watched this first Harry Potter movie with your kids yet?
Not yet. Our kids are 3 and 5.
They're ready.
And so we've been yeah, they're a little young. We've been doing family movie night and going through like Pixar. So we're doing like Toy Story, Monsters Inc. I think that probably when they're like 7 and 9, we'll start the books. Trying to think about also our 5-year-old, bless her, doesn't like scary things. And I think that I was watching this movie thinking like maybe we could show it to her. Nope, that's terrifying for a 5-year-old. So I don't want to push it. But it's funny. I think that kind of what you talked about with us or our generation sharing it with the next generation is kind of what our parents did to us with like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and or even like Little House on the Prairie. Like these kind of their childhood books, bringing it to our generation. And I remember reading The Hobbit with my parents, and I mean, they read it to me like I could read, but it was a thing we did together before bedtime, which wasn't, we didn't read together every night, but I remember them being excited to show us The Hobbit. And I don't know if I was just nostalgic from an early age or not, but I remember thinking like, oh, this is important to mom and dad. I should like this. Which not that a child should feel that way. Like that's not the expectation, but maybe that's how the kids will feel with Harry Potter. Because it's hard to contain excitement when you're really into something. Like we've been trying to get our kids to like Bluey because it's a great kids show, and then people are pushing it too hard, which is why they don't like it, you know? So
it's both ways.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with Harry Potter to, or do I just leave the book there and like let them find it on their own? I mean, it's all over the house. It's not like they can avoid Harry Potter.
When they're of age, just like have this movie on a loop, have this and Chamber of Secrets on a loop on the TV, and just like hope that they'll walk by it and like
I think just play Hedwig's theme outside their door as they sleep at night, like dun 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 dun, 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 dun. And then they'll just be like, it'll be subliminal brainwashing towards Harry Potter.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
That's the way to go. It's obviously the only way to get your kids into this book, this famously uninteresting book and movie.
So, in terms of like translating the movie or the book to the big screen, Brian, how do you think that this movie sort of like, does it succeed in the world building and like of like doing the impossible of making this like insanely rich and interesting world of wizarding that is brought to life within the first book? Does it like translate that well to the big screen, do you think?
Yeah. So this movie is sort of an interesting turning point, where along with um the Lord of the Rings movies, of course, turn of the century, you've got basically technology enabling some of these fantasy or science fiction stories that had not been able to be told in this way now are sort of able to be told, because you've got the technology to portray like a troll or a three-headed dog that like would have been very
Hmm.
difficult, you know um using practical effects. So you're and Quidditch, like there's no way to do that unless you've got like
Yeah.
heavy CGI. um and so this is really the first time you're able to take a book like the first Harry Potter book. Just the timing worked out perfectly where the books came out and the technology enabled them to put this sort of story on the screen. I think, watching with modern eyes, like we said, there are holes in the way it's portrayed, but it's very stylized. I think especially like the Quidditch sequence stands out
Hmm.
as being like really good and sort of this zany sort of style, and there's a lot going on, but you can like track the action and tell what's going on in a way where you're taking things that the fans of the book had imagined for a really long time and putting them on a screen in a way that the fans can actually see what's going on in sort of a fresh way. So it's like a new way to engage with the story. And I think, people loved these movies for that reason, because the story that they loved, they were able to actually see with their own eyes, like some of the things, or like engage with like how would this actually work in real life and not in
Hmm.
my imagination. And so that's always really neat, and I think the movie is really successful in that regard.
Yeah, it takes this like all this fantasy stuff like Quidditch, this thing that only exists on the page, and it made it like very real in a way where it then like, okay, because we were able to translate it from page to screen, it then felt like we were able to translate it from screen to like our real life, to the point
Yeah.
where many like colleges across the US have Quidditch teams.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like like that's wild. And it was because, within this movie and the other movies, we were like able to see all of that stuff like operate in a something that like resembles a real tangible world. Hannah, as like a faithful fan of Harry Potter and of this book, how did you feel like the movie succeeded in translating all of that stuff to the big screen? Was it what you had hoped for?
Yeah, I think this movie does a really good job, particularly like Brian said with the technology at the time. I think what really sells it, honestly, is the acting. I
Oh
think that
yeah.
you see Harry's cute little baby face just like open mouthed at the best. I think at kind of a good scene to kind of take this is when they're on the
Hmm.
train and he opens the chocolate frog card. And you just see the frog, jump out the window.
Yeah.
He's incredulous. Or then he sees the picture, the chocolate frog card of Dumbledore, and he's like, wait, he's gone. So it's his incredulity and excitement about what's happening, coupled with Ron's just like, yeah, that's just what it is. So you have this like newcomer coming to
Yeah.
it with so much awe, as this is so amazing, and then you have I I think a lot of times at first blush, and I'm going into books and story, but you see Harry's the brave one, Hermione's the smart one, and Ron's just there.
Hmm.
Ron, justice for Ron, because he is the knowledge of the wizarding world. He is the street
Hmm.
smarts that you can only learn through experience and immersion into this world. And so while you do have I mean, honestly, every book should be called Harry Potter and the Time That Hermione Saved Everybody, but that'd be confusing, so you can't do that. But you have Hermione being book smart and saving their tails constantly, which is really well discussed and well talked about. But what you have with Ron of like his knowledge of wizard's chess, his knowledge of wizard's duels, which wasn't in this movie, but it's in the first book. Like all of this knowledge he brings not only helps them along through the story, but helps you as either the reader or the watcher in your believability. You jump in to believe it because you see that Ron is almost blasé about this amazingness that's going on in a way that makes you believe it more. So I think that, and for children, I mean, again, their characters are 11, and I don't think that the actors I didn't check their ages, but they're not far off. And so the actors did a phenomenal job in playing their role, and kind of what they needed to be all together makes it so believable. Early this year, perhaps it was last year, I read Tom Felton's memoir. So he plays Draco Malfoy.
Of course.
And Tom Felton talks about particularly filming this first movie, and how it was a very good experience. Chris Columbus, the director, was like really good at working with the kids. All of the adult actors were really good at making the set, I mean, from Tom Felton's perspective, making the set a safe place for children where they can.
That's awesome.
They were considered, they were considered professionals, but they weren't they weren't yelled at for being kids or anything like that. Most of them were baby actors. Tom Felton had been in some stuff, but nothing like this. And so I think that I don't know a lot about directing or about Chris Columbus, but it seems like what he did, particularly with the children, was really, really produced something amazing. And that they were obviously a little bit overacting because they're children. And like Brian said earlier, carrying so much dialogue.
Yeah.
But I think that the acting really made this so believable in a way that you shouldn't have to expect 11-year-olds to be able to portray on screen.
It's like, I know that there are a lot of remarkable things about this movie working, but I think one of the most is the casting and the ability of those three main leads, as well as like the guy who played Malfoy and like all of the other actors. But like there is so much weight on them to like carry this and be believable, and whoever was in charge of casting like absolutely knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely.
Because not only like those three kids in particular like embody those characters in such a like insanely profound way. It's hard to imagine these movies obviously with like anyone else. But then also like the fact that all three of them are by all accounts like still like really good performers, have made like a lot of really cool choices in their post Harry Potter acting careers. They all by all accounts like seem like well-adjusted, like normal adult people, which is such a hard thing when you are the star of the biggest movie in the world when you're 11 years old. Like it's like such a it's insane to think about like all of the ways that things could have gone wrong either for the movie itself or for like these kids in their lives going forward. And the fact that like none of that happened is absolutely amazing. The other thing that I wanted to circle back on that you guys were talking about is sort of like the way that Daniel Radcliffe plays Harry, especially in the early parts of the movie, where he expresses this like awe at the wizarding world as a whole. And like when he's first experiencing it, he is like literally our, like as audience members, he's like our stand-in for seeing all of these things for the first time. Like when he's walking through like what is it like a part of London where he like goes shopping for like
Diagon
wands and all that
Alley.
stuff. Of course.
Yeah.
Sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. It is in London. It's like a sneaky street that only wizards can see. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Duh, silly rat.
It's okay. No, it's okay.
But like when he's like walking through there and there's all this like awe and wonder in his eyes, that's like, those are the same emotions that we're feeling. We're like, oh my God, all of this stuff is real. Look at it.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. And the way that he's able to like portray that is, I think, one of the big keys to this movie's success. And then like as Harry becomes more comfortable within the wizarding world, so do we as audience members.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, go ahead.
It's really remarkable, and I think that's probably why Chris Columbus got the gig, because he had the background with the Home Alone, first two Home Alone movies, of like working with kids and getting really good performances out of them. But you do see, because this is all like green screen, and so you're asking a young child to react to something that they are not seeing, and so that those performances end up as good as they are, when there wasn't like precedent. There's no, this is like the turn of the century, this is really the dawn of CGI in movies like this. And so there isn't a playbook for like how to work with kids to get them to react to things like this. And so that you get these young performers and this director working with them to like create this world is just pretty remarkable, and really, you know, set us up well for the rest of the decade, I think.
Yeah. I think one moment particularly for Harry that I found really powerful. Okay, so we're in we're early movie. Vernon and Petunia and Dudley and Harry are running away from the letters. And they're in the shack, and Hagrid comes and breaks in to rescue Harry. And of course, Robbie Coltrane is just, as Hagrid, is so wonderful. He is everything, acts it so well. This like optimistic, rough around the edges, fiercely loyal. I love him. But there's a point where he thinks Dudley is Harry. And he's like, oh, Harry, I wasn't. And, you know, Dudley's so, oh, I'm not Harry. And Harry steps out, chest forward from behind the wall and says, I'm Harry. And, I mean, Harry has lived his whole life, no parents. I mean, I guess he was one when his parents died, but no parents. Completely rejected, unwanted, made known he's unwanted by his aunt, uncle, and cousin. Living in the covered into the. I mean, this boy is ridiculously neglected, and so resigned to it. But there's always a part of him, and this is mirrored in Voldemort's backstory too, that you learn later on in movie 6 or book 6. But a part of him that knows that there's something special about himself, and it's so tamped down, but to the point where Harry, having this boldness to approach Hagrid, this bravery that is so characteristic of a Gryffindor, and is also so ready to believe this ridiculous story about himself. I mean, a giant man comes to you and tells you you're a wizard. Like, what? But that Harry so badly needs to be more than the life he's been given. And Hogwarts and this world becomes so much safety for him. I mean, there are so many times where he asks Dumbledore if he could, or he wishes he could stay at Hogwarts over the summer so he won't have to go back. And there's reasons why he has to go back to his aunts and uncles that we won't get into. But I know I'm trying to not give away everything. I hope this is a spoilers podcast, but I'll try to withhold.
I would assume anyone who's listening to this is, you know,
has read it,
is
and you might get
get
some angry emails like, Hannah got this detail wrong, and I'm really sorry. But yeah, I think that Harry and Daniel Radcliffe in that moment, I mean, again, this acting to be brave, to be young, to be so willing to believe this fantasy. I don't know. I think it's great. I mean, there are some of the more minor actors, child actors who had, you know, the more traditional child actor struggles later on in life. But
Yeah.
you're right that there was so much care taken in this movie to create safe environments, or as safe as
Hmm.
possible for the emotional safety of these children as they grew up. That
Yeah.
and I what is their secret? Because their success rate's pretty high. I can think of 2 that had issues, but yeah.
It's funny that like Christopher Columbus was the one who was, or Chris Columbus was the one who was tapped to direct this, because like Brian, like you were saying, he was known for directing the first 2 Home Alone movies where he gets these like great performances out of Macaulay Culkin. But then we all know that like he was someone who struggled with everything that comes with being a child star and, you know, growing up in that world. Do you feel like Christopher Columbus was the right person to tap for this? I didn't know this at all until I was doing like some light reading about this leading up to this episode, but apparently Spielberg almost directed this, which like could have been cool, but I don't know that a Steven Spielberg Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone movie like totally captures the wonder of this world and like pulls the best out of the 3 main leads the way that a Chris Columbus directed version does.
Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. I don't know. I mean, why mess with perfection? I'm sure Steven Spielberg would have done a great job because he does a great job. He has a proven track record of creating beautiful movies, children's movies. But that doesn't mean he should direct every children's movie. You know, like I don't know enough about Spielberg's like directing style to say definitively or even speculate would he have done a good job. I'm assuming yes, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, not all Spielberg movies are great, and so you could end up with one of his more subpar efforts. I mean, obviously he's one of the best directors ever, so tough to say that like his movie's going to be bad. So I don't know exactly what it would look like. I mean, I tend to think when Spielberg really veers into like heavy CGI usage, like the Ready Player One sort of thing, it becomes less compelling. But, you know, some of his stuff, like Minority Report around this time, you know, is creating a world and heavy CGI, and I really like that movie. War of the Worlds, same sort of thing. I don't want Spielberg to take time on this, and he has a really great run at the very beginning of the 2000s. So I'm glad we got the Harry Potter movie that we got. Chris Columbus wasn't busy, Spielberg was. So I'm good with the way things turned out.
Spielberg was also more in like late 90s to early mid 2000s. He was more in his like deep, moody kind of vibe, as opposed to his like fun, blockbustery movies that we were used to from him in like the 80s or whatever. So I don't know that he necessarily was like in the right headspace to have directed this.
Right.
On the topic of like who was the right director, were all of the casting choices right, and all of that stuff, I think we've sort of touched on this, but this movie, along with the like plans for the Lord of the Rings series, the first movie also came out in 2001, but those like really kicked off this sort of like trend in filmmaking of like planning out franchises. And it's really remarkable that both of those movies worked as well as they did. Let's focus on Harry Potter for now, because that's what we're talking about. But the fact that like WB, that Warner Bros. Was banking so hard on like they needed this movie to work because they were already planning out making 7-8 movies on all of the books. Like that is such a huge gamble. Like, how do you guys feel, either for better or for worse, that approach to filmmaking and the success of this movie in particular, how has that like impacted the style of filmmaking that we've seen going forward in the 21st century?
Yeah, well, it certainly affects the type of movies that can get big budgets, I think we've seen, because there is somewhat of a risk to like spend this much money on a movie and play it out a series, but there's also huge upside of like, if you have a hit, you can have a movie out every year and make
Mm-hmm.
money year after year after year on a series of things. And we've seen that in like the Marvel playbook that then starts up, 8-9 years later, of if there's like this continuity and you're training audiences to come back again and again and again for movies, then you can make a lot of money that way. And so, film at this budget level is very much like a business decision.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
but it's also good. I think it's something that audiences have demanded, and something that ultimately, like when it comes to this series, is a really good thing. Of, you want to see these movies year after year after year, and see these characters, and see these beloved books come to the screen. And so you end up with really 8 movies in this series, and just like a lot of time, and get to see like these visions come to life in a way. And so like that's I think it's sort of, I tend to gravitate more towards like the original stories, and not towards sequels or franchises or whatever. But I think there there's certainly an audience for this sort of thing, and I do enjoy it from time to time as well. And I'm glad that these movies got made. And I'm more interested at like the low budget levels as well. So it's not like, I don't need like those huge budgets to be going to like original ideas or whatever. There are plenty of original
Right.
ideas getting made at a low budget level that are
Mm-hmm.
fantastic films as well. So I think this, like, it makes sense from a business perspective why these are the movies that get large budgets, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, when this movie came out, like was released, 4 books were already out.
Mm-hmm.
So Goblet of Fire was released the year before that this movie premiered. I don't know how long the movie was in production for, or the timeline on that, but there was already a proven fan base. I think that
Mm-hmm.
also, because movie 1, I would say books 1 through 3, kind of 4, are really children's books. I mean, they're
Yeah.
good children's books, but kids are, not to say you can phone it in for kids movies,
Yeah.
but they don't have to be phenomenal for a kid to want to go see it, right? It can be a movement, a happening. The merchandise, the wands, the cloaks, the shirts,
Mm-hmm.
like this is a cash cow. It's a good cash cow. It's the kind of thing that I would like to see get money. If you're gonna, commercialize anything, I think this is a great one. But it is a risk, but I think the benefits are so worth the risk, because you kind of
Yeah.
already have a proven fan base. And I think it blew up way more than anybody thought it would. I mean, that we have
Mm-hmm.
a theme park, like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's that I remember buying Bertie Bott's every flavored beans in stores, like even the Jelly Belly or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that the big jelly bean brand had Bertie Bott's every flavored beans. I remember eating a booger flavored one. Like there, this because, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the commercialization of Harry Potter. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really fun. I mean, if you're going to buy your kid candy and they're into Harry Potter, might as well buy them. And by your
Yeah.
kid, I mean me. Might as well buy me a butter. Might as well buy me Bertie Bott. I don't want Bertie Bott's every flavored beans. You can get me a chocolate frog
All right.
as long as it's dark chocolate. Anyway, so I think that Warner Brothers very smartly saw dollar signs when they saw this, the potential of everything they can do out of this, because everybody wants to be a part of the wizarding world. Everybody wants Ruff. Oh, side note, Ruff, do you know what house you're in? Which Hogwarts house?
Oh wow, you that was one of my questions.
Ah,
I was
sorry.
going to ask you guys. So I've taken the quiz,
Okay.
and I've gotten Gryffindor.
Everybody wants to be a Gryffindor. It's okay. The brave
I feel
at
like
heart.
I feel like that's boring though, right? To be
I mean,
to get
it's
to
a
get
little
Gryffindor.
basic, but at least you're not a Hufflepuff, you know?
Yeah, I felt very, very basic getting that answer.
Yeah.
I feel like it goes one of two ways, right? It's either like main character energy, or you're like the most boring person in the world. And I feel like I fall into the most boring person in the world.
Oh, Rob, I
form
think
of
you're
Gryffindor.
interesting. I thought you were going to say it goes one of 4 ways because there's 4 houses. But
Yeah, well,
that's fair.
What about you guys?
Do you know what you are, Brian?
I do not, which actually, so
Unforgivable.
go ahead, Hannah, and then I'll share my thing.
Oh, I'm a Ravenclaw.
You're a Ravenclaw.
I'm
Yeah.
definite. Hard Ravenclaw.
Which one is what's like the makeup of Ravenclaw? Are those the smart kids?
They're the smart ones.
Yeah.
They're the practical ones, the kind of pretentious ones, which I don't feel like I am, but I think I just have correct opinions and I share them loudly.
Yeah, that's a Ravenclaw thing.
And they're often backed by like science and facts.
That's like the Oxford of Hogwarts.
Yeah.
I didn't know what house I am, and I still don't, but this actually came up. We saw this movie a couple of months ago, which was actually somewhat of the impetus for us choosing it for this podcast. We saw it with the score performed live, and so we got to sort of like see it in a movie theater, and it was amazing seeing the score performed live. But the thing that stood out the most to me was people were having very different experiences of this movie than I have, being like a non Harry Potter fan. Like, you could tell there were Slytherins in the crowd.
Ugh.
That when that felt wronged, when Dumbledore is giving out points and like putting his foot on the scale so that Gryffindor wins the House Cup. The Slytherins were angry. I thought there were going to be fights breaking out in the theater because people were having very different experiences of this scene. So it was a very interesting like environment to go in, of like people identify with this movie and their house so much that it could like change their change how they experience the movie. It's wild to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Slytherins are so proud of being Slytherins. But what I loved is the delivery in this movie of particularly McGonagall right before the sorting ceremony. There's Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. And just like the down voice on Slytherin.
Yeah.
It reminds me of this tweet that I saw, and it was like, the founders of Hogwarts are like, okay, so we all know that there are 4 kinds of kids: brave, smart, evil, and miscellaneous.
Is miscellaneous, is that Hufflepuff?
Yeah.
They're like the stoner kids, right?
No,
that's what I've heard.
Hufflepuff are so Cedric Diggory was a Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff are those that they don't get a lot of glory, but they're the Enneagram 2s, if you will. They're the ones that just want to make sure that everyone is like involved and safe.
They're like the very agreeable friend.
Yeah. So there's a I mean, the Sorting Hat. So famously, the Sorting Hat has a different song before every sorting ceremony.
Of course, famously.
Famously. Well, there's a joke because Harry and Ron miss a lot of sorting ceremonies because of various
shenanigans and whatnot.
Yes. And so they didn't realize it, but they're like, oh, there's a new song, and someone's like, yeah, they always have a new song. The hat sits there for a year. Like, what else is it gonna do with its time but make up a song? But it's talking about like back to the founders, and their original, and I can't remember the exact words, you'll forgive me, of everybody else, but they go through each one, and Helga Hufflepuff is the last one. She says, I'll take the lot and I'll teach them all the same. Like, they're very about equality, but not in like a social justice warrior kind of way. They're an
Yeah.
equality in like a, yeah, of course everyone has a right to
Yeah.
an education, you know? So you're going to see
Very
a lot
chill.
of Muggleborns and Hufflepuff. You're going to see a
Yeah.
lot of the like people who are really into herbology in the Hufflepuffs. In fact, the herbology professor is a Hufflepuff.
Of
So,
course.
that is the head of house.
Yeah.
Ironically, though, in the epilogue, you learn that Neville, who was a Gryffindor, ends up being the herbology professor's successor. Anyway,
Interesting.
But yeah, so Hufflepuffs are fine. They're just kind of like the boring ones, and so they get a lot of crap. But I would rather be a Hufflepuff than a Slytherin
Yeah.
any day.
Interesting.
So did you figure out what you are, Brian?
No, I did not.
Oh,
I
okay.
have not taken the quiz, so
I think he's too scared. He's going to be a Slytherin.
Yeah. I'm just going to say it. I think there is a part of me, maybe if I had taken the quiz when I was like in high school or middle school, I'd be a Slytherin. But not in like an evil kind of way.
Yeah.
Just like always kind of like up to no good. And
Yeah.
like always getting into shenanigans, but not like in the good way that Harry and Ron were.
Right.
But just sort of, you know.
Well, I think the idea of
little shit stirrer.
Yeah. I mean, Slytherin is encapsulated in this really good Voldemort quote, which I'm going to say it's from when Harry meets him down in front of the Mirror of Ezraed, where which is desire spelled backwards, by the way. Just yeah. I mean, that's just like a fun thing that she throws in there. But
Dog.
Something that Voldemort says that is so like, how can you take Slytherin and just take it to the nth degree, is there is no good or evil. There is just power and those who are too weak to seek it. And so they're a very, by any means necessary. They're very, how do we have control? How do we have power? There's very sly. They're very sneaky. They're very skirt the rules if it's for their personal benefit. So you're going to see a lot of Slytherins, like Draco Malfoy's father, Lucius, who have political influence and power, who use intimidation and finances as a means to get what they want. So I think that like it's possible to be a Slytherin and have a moral compass. It's possible, but a lot of the worst examples of Slytherins are those who have a very warped view of what is right and what is wrong because their desire for personal gain, or there may be irised view of what they want, their tunnel vision perhaps on what they want, lets them skirt the feelings and opinions of others. So there's it's not bad to be a Slytherin, but like, there isn't a Witcher wizard who went bad that wasn't in Slytherin, as Ron says. So
yeah, maybe I should go back on my Slytherin take, because I don't think that any of what you said sort of like aligns with who I am and like how I try to live my life as a person. So maybe I am just a really boring Gryffindor.
No, it sounds like you are a Gryffindor. I mean, the key trait of a Gryffindor is bravery. And so if you're into your shenanigans and doing it just sounds like when you were in high school, you were a dumb teenager who was also a Gryffindor. And that's fine.
Yeah, I guess so. I just always thought that it was kind of like a boring choice. Also, while we're here, we haven't really talked about it, but I think we're deep enough in the conversation and we've built enough of a rapport between the three of us and also our listeners out there, where I can admit that I was not the biggest Harry Potter fan growing up, and not in a way where I am like someone who like wants to like openly like crap on those who enjoy Harry Potter. It was just never like something that I connected to on a really deep level. Like I think I read the first book like around the time that it came out, and I didn't love it, but I was like, yeah, this is cool. My parents like took me to see this movie when it came out. Again, like I think they thought like, oh man, like maybe he'll love it, and I was like, yeah, that was chill or whatever. I read the second book, watched the second movie, and then sort of like after that, I stopped. So like when I took the quiz, 5 years ago or whatever it was, while talking to a bunch of peers who are Harry Potter people. It almost like felt icky for me to be like, yeah, I'm not a big Harry Potter guy, but like I am in the house that all Harry Potter fans like would want to be in.
Yeah.
It was almost like I felt like guilty that
Sure.
like
That's
I'm
fair.
like I'm just like jumping into this world that I'm not really a part of, and like, hey, yeah, guys, I'm Harry Potter, even though I haven't read anything past Goblet of Fire or whatever.
Yeah. One of my most favorite things is talking to like adults, grown-up people who have are reading through Harry Potter for the first time. Like didn't read it in their childhood for a myriad of reasons. Maybe it's because some groups of people didn't allow their children to read it because it was about witchcraft, and so there was some fear there. So a lot of friends who grew up in more like conservative Christian homes, that was just kind of, it wasn't like the war on Harry Potter. It was just like, let's steer them towards something else. And so, which is fair because I mean, it's not about witchcraft, honestly. And I think that like if those people who kind of were just shied away from it knew the ending, they would be fine with it. Like it's not, towards the end message, I think, is something that any parent would want their child to agree with. Anyway, whole nother thing, not getting into it. But I have friends who are reading it as adults. My favorite thing is to just watch them experience it for the first time. There was actually a girl, some girl on TikTok who was reading it through it for the first time and just kind of like her live reactions through books 3 and 4. And she's like, oh, she's so funny. I can't remember her name, but it's like, they didn't get the hype. Maybe they're like you. They didn't get the hype growing up. It was fine, but it wasn't their thing. Or maybe some people were like trying to be cool and like they're too good for Harry Potter.
There were certainly some elements of that which I was maybe guilty of in like middle school.
Okay. Well, everyone's too cool for everything in middle school, so
they were definitely, I was like part of a group who in middle school we were like, no, we're like cool and edgy. We like Lord of the Rings. And we're too highbrow for Harry Potter. That's kid stuff. We like the Two Towers. So like there's definitely that element. I've grown out of that.
Were you like the kind of kids who were like really into the Boondock Saints? Remember that movie?
Yeah. I became one of those guys in high school for sure.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It tracks.
That's cool. Yeah, this is a linear path you're on. Okay.
Yeah, the anti-Harry Potter to Boondock Saints pipeline. Everyone is familiar with it. But I've also experienced people who, like in my adult life, have gone through reading the Harry Potter books for the first time, watching through all of the movies for the first time. And I've always thought I think maybe at some point I would like to do that. Again, I might not fall in love with it in the same way that a lot of Potterheads or whatever it is that you call yourselves, are in love with it. But I do think that it is a worthwhile thing to check out, especially just because of like it's like cultural cachet. Like, like you're in a social setting of people who are in their early 30s, and the question is always like, so what house are you in at Hogwarts? And if you don't have an answer, then you're shunned from those social settings. You're like, they're like, Brian, like, what do you mean you don't know what house you're in?
Okay, here's
you're out of the
though.
conversation now.
Maybe I'm guilty of that. I really want everyone to love Harry Potter. It's really fun to just be like, what, you've never read it before? It's like when someone tells you they don't like cheese, and you have to, I like cheese, but I have a friend who doesn't like cheese, and every time he tells someone he doesn't like cheese, they're like, what about mac and cheese? What about pizza? What about Italian food? And he's like, no, I don't like cheese. I don't like cheese on any of those things. I just take cheese off. No, I don't eat pizza. Like, for him, it's just, he's so bombarded with it all the time. Or like I used to have a friend who was like 6'4", and people would constantly ask him, how tall are you?
Yeah.
Anyway, so much divergence here. But I think as a whole, people who love Harry Potter want everyone to love Harry Potter. Like, we don't ever want to not talk about Harry Potter. And if you want to love Harry Potter so we can talk about it together, that's
Mhm.
great. I don't think Harry Potter people are gatekeepers of the culture. I don't think that we
Yeah.
you know, think love Harry Potter because it's too cool for everybody. I
Mhm.
think that Harry Potter can be what it needs to be to anybody who experiences it, whether they just like to read a book, whether they just want to watch the movies. I might crap on you if you just watch the movies and say you like it, because I'm like, do you really like it? You don't know the books, but I'm trying to not do that so much. Not everyone likes reading. Yeah, it's there's just so much good community in Harry Potter,
Mhm.
and even now, like decades later, the funniest tweets, the funniest TikToks, like people are so funny. And Harry Potter is just this. Anyway, I'm ranting again. I really love Harry Potter.
I love it. I love seeing people enjoying things. That's right, that's like the point of this show, is to
Yeah.
celebrate in particular like the movies that people love, why we love them, why we consider them to be essential, like why Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone should be a movie that any um up and coming or new film fan, or just like maybe older film fan, like should watch and can appreciate, right? So whether it's because you're someone who grew up reading the books, or if it's because you're someone who's interested in trends in the film industry and like film business, and you're interested in how this movie changed the way that we thought about franchise filmmaking. If you want to think about how this movie and its success, and to sort of, let's circle back to this discussion because I thought this was kind of interesting. This movie, right, we spoke about how it sort of had a built-in fan base, a built-in audience. So like it was probably going to be a cash cow either way. But I think when we just like talk about the movie in that regard, it takes away from the successes of this movie as a piece of like filmmaking. I do still think that this is a really impressive piece of art, of culture, of media as a text itself. And because it's able to succeed in all of those ways that it sets out to, sort of artistically and all that stuff, that is like the reason why it blew up to the point where it did, where we now have Harry Potter amusement parks where you can go to King's Crossing in London and you can take a picture at platform 9 3/4. Like you can buy butterbeer at the random Harry Potter pop-up that is in your city or town. Like all of those things don't happen if this movie doesn't work as a movie. It still would have made a fuck ton of money, and like we would have had all of the other movies, but I don't think that it would resonate with the larger culture the way that it does if this movie doesn't succeed. And that is like such a tall task.
Yeah.
And it I think it lived up to all of that hype in all of the ways that it needed to. I don't know if you guys agree or have
No, I
like
do.
additional thoughts on that.
Yeah. It,
No, we
it's
agree.
always novel.
Brian, tackle all of that.
Oh boy. Novel adaptations always run into this like faithfulness to the book thing, where there is this built-in audience, and that can run both ways of they you can make more money because people are already sort of primed to see it and want to see it come to screen, but they're also going to have expectations and opinions about what the movie should be because they already love the story. And so it can somewhat hinder creativity of like you've got to stay in certain bounds to keep the audience satisfied, or to make the movie that they already want. So you're not like starting from scratch. You're starting from, we've got an audience for this already that wants the movie to be a particular way. And there's reasons for that too, of like the book was well loved for a reason. And so you don't want to stray too far because you're going to probably make it worse if you do. In terms of adapting, the nice thing here, I think, is that it's a short book and it's a kid's book, so you don't have to like cut out a whole lot, though there is some stuff that does end up being cut, but not as significant as perhaps later movies in the series or other book adaptations have to do to get it to a runtime. So yeah, you've got that, but I think this does really, Ruff, like you've said, it stands on its own of like, if you'd never read the book, you'd never engaged with it. Like the story stands on its own and is a really strong movie that satisfied sort of both crowds, the crowd of super fans who really wanted faithfulness to the book, and the casual viewers who maybe had never even read the book and are just, going to check out what is this Harry Potter thing about. I think it does like sum that up pretty well and has a life of its own beyond like the book series.
Right. I mean, this series was a really big exercise for me, and like the book doesn't have to be all in the movie, right? Like you need to make a cohesive movie that makes sense from beginning to the end for someone who's never read the book, which is probably why I don't like the third movie. But that's all I'm going to say about the third movie. I promised I wasn't going to do it. Anyway,
that's our sounder for your one hot take. Yeah,
that's my one hot take. That's all I'm allowed. I think even in like the seventh, there's a couple things in 7 Part 1 where they just like either added in a scene out of nowhere or completely changed kind of a significant moment in a way that I actually think was better for the screen. I don't think the particularly the thing that they changed, which it's someone's death, so that's why I'm not going to say who it is, but people die in the 7th movie, by the way, multiple, and book. But anyway, somebody's death in the 7th movie they do totally different than the book, but I think it's actually better in the movie the way they do it.
Yeah,
I think that this movie leaves out a lot, particularly Harry's life before Hogwarts. There's a lot more there, a lot more that highlights his complete lack of love and affection from his family, that highlights his loneliness. The letters from no one, that's what the chapter is called if I'm correct, goes on for a long time. The letters just keep coming. It's so funny. There's a thing where Uncle Vernon is described as pulling out parts of his mustache. Also, I should say, just because I think that the book 1 has one of the best opening lines of all books. It was, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but anyway, I think that's so funny. So there's a lot that just like it kind of has to move through quickly, but it never feels rushed. I do want to say there's one thing that I think they should have done in the movie and they didn't. Because it more sets up for the struggle of the entire series. So you have Harry meet Malfoy right before the Sorting Hat in the movie. And Malfoy does a great job. I mean, Malfoy comes up the stairs. He stands a little bit above Harry. It's reminiscent of the stair scene in Battleship Potemkin.
Oh,
the power is at the top of the stairs.
That is not a connection that I thought we were going to make today, but no, I love that. Yeah,
I mean, it's just like, I'm above you. I'm going to reach my hand down as Malfoy and welcome you into my wizarding world. To when Harry says, I think I'm capable of making my own friends. Thanks, though.
That's what all 10-year-olds were looking for in 2001. Yeah. They were like, I need this Harry Potter movie to reference Battleship Potemkin. That's like
it's just
all that I want.
Not a Battleship Potemkin for me, honestly. That's like my only critique. But in the book, Harry actually meets Malfoy in Diagon Alley. They're getting fitted for their robes, and Malfoy doesn't know who Harry is. Malfoy obviously has grown up knowing who Harry is. Harry, spoiler alert, Harry brought down the person that Malfoy's family had allegiance to. Lucius Malfoy was a Death Eater, spoiler.
What?
But
I actually didn't know that.
You did?
I did not.
Oh. Okay, guy. I'm not sorry because you should know that. But
that's fine.
It's
That's
not
on
like
me.
a twist or anything.
Yeah, that's not a twist,
No.
but it's just something. Yeah. But anyway, so you
learn.
In that scene in Madame Malkin's dress shop, you have Malfoy really does a good job explaining the pure blood elitist kind of constant tension within the wizarding world. Malfoy does that to Harry, just like as if Harry agrees with him. He's like, I don't think they should let in all this other, all these people that come in. I want it to be more elite, just kept within wizarding families. He even says, "What's your surname, by the way?" And then gets interrupted. Yeah. And I don't think that the movie is wrong for leaving that out. I just think that scene is just a really, really good primer for this constant tension of this caste system within the entire wizarding world of, you know, anybody can be a wizard if they have magical blood versus pure bloods only, that of course really spirals. And I mean, that's what Voldemort, and then before him, Grindelwald, and a little bit Dumbledore, another spoiler, way back in the day, all felt this wizarding might type of thing. And so it's a little early, I think, for the movie audience to see that. But the movie could have kind of pushed into that more. I think on reflection, I'm glad that they didn't, because this movie is really setting up this amazingness of the wizarding world. And I don't know that the 11-year-olds are really ready to
within all of like the awe and wonder of those like sort of early scenes, it may have been, even like for 11-year-olds or like older audience members, it may have just been like a little jarring to include that within that moment. It probably could have been done in a way that works cinematically, but like for the kind of like story and emotions that we were trying to elicit, you know, in that time in the movie, it maybe didn't totally make sense. I'm gonna go on like a bit of a tangent here, and I'm gonna ask you guys, I'm gonna see if you guys are following along with what I'm putting down. But like whole notion that is set up in this movie and obviously like carries through the rest of the series, I feel like it's maybe a little bit more prominent in the next movie than it is in this. But Hannah, to this point that you're talking about of like the struggle between the different kinds of wizards and like the purebloods versus muggleborns, or like people who you know, like Harry is he's like second generation muggle or whatever. I don't know if I'm using the terminology correct.
I mean, his mother was muggle-born, so he's half and half. As Seamus Finnegan would said, I'm half and half. My dad's mom's a wizard, my dad's a witch, or whatever. Anyway, love Seamus Finnegan.
Hilarious. The Irish. But so like that whole concept is obviously something that like translates to many of like our real world experiences and like societal ills across the board. But I do wonder like how that plays with this movie sticking with a English, Irish, I don't know if there are any Scots or Welsh people in it, but like
excuse me, Oliver Wood and those sexy eyebrows. I should let you know, I told Brian this, Sean Biggerstaff, who is Oliver Wood's, I had a like very weird crush on him as like
massive crush.
Yeah I think it's the point where I figured it out. He's explaining Quidditch and he goes, the keeper, that's me. The way he says that's me really gets me. Anyway, Oliver Wood. Sorry, go on.
So like I do wonder if, right, keeping it within that specific world of the UK makes all of those issues more palatable for American audiences, as opposed to like what could have been an easy change for the cinematic version would be to like make this an American story and like use American actors and have Hogwarts be within the US. And then like mixing in that story, it could have been like a little too close to home. So I wonder if like keeping the story British in its like makeup, its locale, and all of that stuff. Also like not even just for right this issue of discrimination against Muggle-born wizards, but also just like the world of wizarding seems so much cooler when it's British as opposed to if it were American. So that is like my weird ramble way of asking you guys, do you feel like keeping this movie within England was the right choice, or like how do you think it would have played differently if we had Americanized it in like many ways?
So I agree. This movie, it's British. It should stay British. It's got all British actors, at least for the primary characters. J.K. Rowling is British. It's set in England. I'm gonna get real. Okay, so deep in the wizarding world. So there's one reference to American witches and wizards in Harry Potter. At least the Harry Potter books. In book 4, when they're at the Wizarding World Cup, and there's all these different people. I mean, it's the World Cup. Like, there's people from everywhere. And Harry's walking through the campground, seeing all, and there's one where it's the Salem Witch Society. And so it's like from Salem, Massachusetts, from the Salem Witch Trials. Also, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is set in the 40s. So Harry, this movie is set in 1991. Harry was born in 1980. So Fantastic Beasts set in
Reagan
baby. Set in the 20s, 40s, 20s, 40s. Shoot,
I don't know. But
I think it's the 40s.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I think it's the 40s. Anyway, please don't come at me, Ralph's guests. I'm so sorry. Or Ralph's listeners. Anyway, shows that in the American wizarding world law, wizards are not allowed to mate with muggles. They're like a fully separate society. So
nice.
Yeah,
little wizarding Jim Crow.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no. Yes. We only need like a wizarding loving.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Potterverse, the people of Kentucky.
So good. Yeah. So, but no, I think that, we as Americans want to Americanize everything or make America so centric. I think like obviously Great Britain is not that separate from America. There is still obviously racism and classism and discrimination and biases and all these other things everywhere. Any colonial nation like the UK will have that, just like America does. But yeah, I think that like if this movie would have failed, I'm going to say it. This is my other hot take, but it's not a mean one this time. That I think this movie would have failed if they would have changed it so much to make it American. I think the Britishness of it kind of adds to this, like, boarding school in Britain is so fantastical already for American audiences that, I wouldn't change the setting. I mean, because then you have to change the accents, and then you have to change like that they have tea and they write with quills.
A magical train ride through the British countryside is so much more romantic than a magical train ride from like Washington D.C. to Philadelphia.
Yeah, or like Omaha to Lincoln.
Yeah, from Chicago to Denver.
Yeah, do they even have?
Well, that might be the most romantic. Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. You go through the Rockies, but yeah. So I like that this. Well, actually, okay, no, I'm sorry. There's another reference to America in the series. It's in book 6. There's the Prime Minister of England. It talks about he's waiting for a call from a president in a far off country, which like you're led to assume it's going to be the U.S. president. Anyway, sorry, that's the only reference I can think of. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, it does seem like it sort of needs to be British. You know, you'd think like changing the location is more like window dressing. That wouldn't change necessarily the plot, but it does change the feel of the movie in, I think, too significant a way, where the way that this movie works, its sensibilities, and yeah, it needs to be a British story, because that's the context in which it was written, and that's important to keep for what this movie is trying to do, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's remind me the name of the alley?
Diagon. So together it's diagonally. Diagon Alley.
JK.
Oh, I thought it was just diagonal. I didn't diagonally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I like it.
Yeah, I love that. But like even something like that doesn't work if the story takes place in Dallas, Texas.
No.
Right. Yeah.
Or even New York City. It doesn't work. It's not the same. It totally needed to stay within England. That feels like a weird place for us to end, but I don't have any other questions or topics about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Do you guys is there anything that I missed that you all wanted to bring up about this movie before we get into recommendations and goodbyes?
Yeah, I just want to talk about the Mirror of Ezraed a little bit.
Please.
So the scene where Dumbledore finds Harry while he's sitting in front of the mirror is so beautiful. I think that scene is one of the most beautiful pictures of Dumbledore's character as a teacher. How he is kind, how he was respectful, how he is so understanding of Harry's desire. This almost omniscient type of presence, and Harry reveres him so much. I mean, he's Dumbledore. Like, the name alone. Anyway, Dumbledore does have one line that I just think about constantly. It's it does not do well to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Which I just, what good advice that is.
Yeah.
You know, the actor who plays Dumbledore, who I've already forgotten his name. Good Lord. It dies after the second movie.
Yeah, the guy from Unforgiven.
Yeah, and is replaced by Gandalf.
Michael Gambon.
Yeah. So he's Albert Harris.
No, it's not Gandalf. It's not Ian
Gandalf.
McKellen. It's Michael Gambon. Yeah.
Gambon. That's not the same person. Hold the phone. I've been thinking
Michael Gandalf.
I just assumed that there was one single British guy with a beard that played every British guy with a beard in all of England.
Yeah, I don't even think he has a beard. I think that's all hair and makeup.
That's a fake beard. Anyway, I think that there was a big up in arms about the replacement of Dumbledore when it happened, because I mean, obviously, you know, Richard Harris died. It's not his fault. But that the newer Dumbledore later on in the series was much more like angry and dramatic. But which I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. It's more of he was acting to what the story told him to be, and you get to know Dumbledore better throughout the series. But I just think that Richard Harris was phenomenal. Also, Maggie Smith is a national treasure for the US as well as the UK. I love her so
Alan
much.
Rickman too. They really went all out with these teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alan Rickman. We don't have time to talk about Snape. Roth, I could do an entire 2-hour podcast about the character of Snape.
That will be a Patreon only
Honestly,
episode.
yeah. Let me know when you're ready
Hannah
for that.
Solo pod.
Just me by myself. Rob, you don't have to come.
It starts with me just saying, Hannah, Snape, go. And then
take it
it's
away.
2 hours.
Yeah, no, yeah, I can't. I'm not going to get into it, but Snape. So phenomenal. Also, grade A asshole. And I don't know that all of what he does is forgiven because of the one big thing that he does that everyone thinks he should be forgiven for all the other stuff. But it's fine.
But he is Alan Rickman, which is awesome.
Also, yeah.
God bless him.
Yeah. Rest his
R.I.P.
soul.
My last thing here is just wanted to shout out the John Williams score. It's really fantastic.
good.
You have that iconic sort of theme that's woven throughout. Seeing it with the live score really highlighted like how difficult this is, but how much that fades into the background when you're watching the movie without a live score. Like there's a bunch of like trills in the trills would
it's not a trill. I'm not musical. I don't know.
Yeah, so anyway, I'll leave it to Harry Potter geekery and not get into music theory geekery today.
The Harry Potter to music theory geekery pipeline is ripe.
Yeah. So a very difficult score to perform, but not one that's like showy or draws attention to itself, except when it needs to draw attention to itself, which is what John Williams is just so good at doing. He can create these iconic things that stick in your head and then score an entire movie in a way that just improves the feel and makes it magical and wonderful.
I mean, that theme alone, my best friend is a professional oboist, and she has performed like we didn't get to see her. We saw her mom on violin in this performance, but
nice.
She has done this score symphony thing for Harry Potter. I think at least the first 2 movies, if not the third. And she's like, it's really hard. Like for a professional oboist and all the things she has to do. She's like, this one's pretty tricky.
Interesting. I would have no like frame of reference. But
I don't either.
The score is
I don't
amazing.
know it's so good. And it's I mean, I feel like
it's so instantly recognizable.
Yeah.
You know, you hear those like few notes of the main theme and you automatically are like taken to a very specific place in the world. It's really cool.
Yeah. And so I think for a lot of us Potterheads, especially ones who have been that way since youth, it's such a comfort place. Like music has this way of, I mean, just eliciting these latent emotions that you don't know you have, right? And so good. So good.
Amazing. All right, last question before we wrap this up. Have you guys been to the Harry Potter amusement park? Are there plans to go? What's the deal there?
We have not been. I really want to go. I also don't like spending a lot of money. Brian might disagree with that. Because I do actually like spending money.
Hannah likes deals.
I like deals. I want to go to Potter World by myself. I don't want anyone to be there with me. I don't want to have to I just want to experience everything that it is and not have to worry about taking care of my kids while I'm there, which I know is so selfish.
Maybe when the kids are older, it'd be more fun.
Yeah. So I think I could have gone when I was younger, but I was broke. And now that we could probably afford it, I want to wait till the kids are into it. Like I would like the kids to just be losing their minds. And then I'm totally cool to spend stupid amounts of money.
Yeah, that would be a great family experience.
Yeah. Just like we've talked about waiting for Disney till both kids can remember it. You know, it's just
I think you guys you've got it right.
Yeah.
Have you been to Platform 9 3/4?
I have not. I've never been to the UK. Have you? Well, you have.
I've been to London, but I did not go to Platform 9 3/4.
That was before me when he was, just on the periphery of Potter fandom.
My life was so much less magical.
Honestly, I bring the magic. I remember
it seems cool.
Yeah, I made sure I read.
The people I was studying abroad there. I went with my classmates, and half of the kids in my class were huge Potter fans, and they were geeking out. And I was like, "Hey, yeah,
I'm
sure.
so happy for you."
Good for you guys. It's a Okay, we're gonna take
It's okay.
pictures. Sweet, awesome.
Cool. I'll hold the
Yeah.
camera. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, nice.
No, I get it.
So you guys will have to make both of those things happen. You'll have
We
to.
certainly will.
I'm sure there are other Potter related sites to see in London, so you guys will make it out there. Make it down to. Is it the Universal in Orlando, where Potter World is? Okay.
Yeah.
So make that happen.
It's Orlando. I'm assuming it's Universal.
Yeah, it sounds
It's Universal.
right.
It's not Disney.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's
Whatever
Universal. That sounds right.
Sounds right.
Amazing. Well, this has been so much fun. I hope it's been as fun for you guys as it has been for me. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Welcome to the canon officially. Happy to have you here. Hannah, Brian, before we get out of here, it sounded like I was calling you like that was just like someone's full name.
That's cool. Cool with it.
Before we say goodbye, let's quickly run through some recommendations. I will quickly run through the rules and idea behind recommendations, just in case we have any new listeners out there who are not familiar with what it is that we do. So for each movie that gets introduced into the canon, we also recommend 3 things each to check out for folks if they like said movie. So we will be recommending things to check out if you like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Those 3 things can be, the connections can be as loose or as on the nose to the movie as we like. We like to get super creative. For those 3 things, at least one of the recommendations has to be another movie. However, we can't recommend any movies that are also in the canon. So unfortunately, no Prisoners of Azkaban, although I don't think that will be an issue for us here.
I would recommend the book.
Yeah, that works. Also, no Lord of the Rings, all that good stuff. The other 2 recommendations, they can be more movies or they can be, any and everything else, an album, a band, a TV show, a book series, a destination, an amusement park, even, really we like to get super weird, super creative, and we like to have fun with it. So with all that being said, we will each go around and give a quick sort of intro for what it is that we are recommending, and why it is that we're recommending it, what its connection is to Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and then take it from there. Let's go Hannah, Brian, Raph for the order.
Love it.
So
Great.
Okay. Am I doing all 3 right now?
One at a time.
One at a time. Okay.
Yeah.
So my thought of this is I did like a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. So
Oh, yes.
yeah. So my recommendation is because Nearly Headless Nick, or Sir Nicholas de Porping-Mincington or something, the Porpington de Mimsy, I can't remember. Anyway, is played by John Cleese. So phenomenal. Monty Python, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I want to recommend my favorite John Cleese movie, and probably one of my favorite fun movies, A Fish Called Wanda.
Nice.
So that's Jamie Lee Curtis as a young ingenue. Brian would put it in his dumb criminals category.
Very important kind of movie to me.
John
Yeah.
Cleese is like
It's a good list.
the bumbling con straight man type of character, and he's so phenomenal. He has a scene where he dances around in tidy whities, which is so charming. It's like a very British bad criminal caper type situation. A Fish Called Wanda.
I love it.
Yep.
I love that first pick.
My first recommendation, I'm going all movies for my recommendations here. But the first one would be this movie called Alice, directed by Jan Svankmajer. It's a Czechoslovakian film from the late 80s. So I'm getting real pretentious with this. But it's an Alice in Wonderland, take on Alice in Wonderland that's part live action, part stop motion. And the way it like switches back and forth is just phenomenal. It's such a good movie. So a bit of because it's based on a book, a children's tale, and then also what made me think of it was the way that CG is used in Harry Potter and this like artificial reality type of thing. is done very well in that movie as well, where it like creates its own world in an interesting way. So that's my first recommendation. Very weird one.
All right.
Nice.
So, as a Czechoslovakian movie, which country claims it now? The Czech Republic or Slovakia?
I do
It's a
not
great
know.
question.
Yeah. Also, I don't know when they were separated. It was post Berlin or post Iron Curtain coming down. Like
That sounds right.
I am not up to date on my Eastern European history. I'm so sorry, folks.
Yeah.
That's okay. I don't think that people are necessarily coming to this show or like this episode in particular to learn about late 20th century Eastern European geopolitics.
Okay.
But
I mean,
if
really,
they are,
every podcast should be talking about that.
yeah, if you're not talking about the fall of Yugoslavia, like what are you doing? Like everyone should be talking about that at all times. That should just be like constant, form of communication.
Absolutely.
Okay, how do I like awkwardly transition into what it is that I'm going to recommend from that conversation? I think I'm going to go with another book series that started in the late 90s. I think this first Harry Potter movie was first published in 1997 or maybe 98. And the book series that I'm going to recommend, also the first book in that series was published in 1997. Again, we were talking about like millennial core sort of ideas of like the early 2000s and stuff in the late 90s. I'm sure even before and after, but like very, very, very millennial thing was like the school book fair, where you're going and like your parents give you like $15 or whatever, $20, and you're able to buy like 8 books. But just like walking around in the gymnasium with all the books set up, and you're like going through, and you've got your Harry Potters and your series of unfortunate events and like all these other great sort of children books going on there. So like I said, I wasn't the biggest Harry Potter fan, although I did read Sorcerer's Stone in 98 or whenever it came out. But my taste was then and still now is much more juvenile, and I prefer a humor that is like not as highbrow as maybe some of the things that you would find on the Sight and Sound Top 100 list. So in 3rd grade or whatever it was, I was more so reading the Captain Underpants books.
Yeah,
that was my jam.
This might be where you were going.
I actually thought so too. I was like,
wonderful.
what series came Captain Underpants?
Captain
How
Underpants
many
was
books are
totally
in that
my jam.
series?
I mean, now there may be like 15. I remember when I was reading it, right, when we were younger in elementary school, there were maybe like 4 or 5. Okay. And I would read those like front to back, like all the time. I thought they were the funniest thing in the world. I couldn't be bothered with like the wizarding world, but give me a dude running around in his tighty whities, like that's for me. And it still is.
I love that. So, Brian, I went to a very small private school, K through 8. I never had a Scholastic book fair. They would give us the little like magazine to take home, and so I would circle everything I wanted. My parents never got it for me, but we didn't. And then you were homeschooled. Did you have Scholastic book fairs?
Yeah, once or twice we did like the book fair thing.
You went? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So like that, I didn't realize, I didn't feel like I was missing out at the time, but the amount of like millennial nostalgia around Scholastic book fairs now makes me feel like I really missed out.
It was like the most magical thing in the world.
Wow. I wonder, well, our daughter's about to start kindergarten. I wonder if they'll do a book fair, and I'll just go redo my childhood as she's doing it for the first time. But Captain Underpants. Okay. Next on my... Okay, so this is so ridiculous, but in Harry Potter, you don't get introduced to him by name, but Lee Jordan, he is the person doing the commentating at the Quidditch match. Mm-hmm. He is also famously, he's in Fred and George's year, and he's their best friend. So he does Weasley's Wizard Wheezes with them and all that stuff. He's kind of it would be really hard being the 3rd best friend of a set of twins, though. Like, how do you actually breaking
Yeah.
into that bond. Anyway, Lee Jordan, or the actor Luke Youngblood, ends up playing the character of Magnitude in the Community series.
Oh!
Pop, pop. So I'm going to recommend the series Community because it is one of the more understated compared to the other things coming out in the 2010s, compared to The Office, Parks and Rec, 30 Rock, all that. Community is one of the most intelligent shows of that type in that era. I mean, really well done. Tackles a lot of kind of hard topics with great humor.
Yeah.
Does so many different movie motifs with all the paintball episodes. Yeah. So I'm just going to recommend I just want to talk about Community, and this is a great way into it. So pop, Magnitude. Go watch Community.
I love it. I love that connection.
That connection is great.
Again, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also have a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon type connection. So for my next one, Harry Potter, one of the things that stood out in this movie was the sequence on and seeing like the magical train ride sort of thing. The long history of great movies that feature or take place on trains. Most notably, Hitchcock frequently used trains in his movies, and so with Hitchcock also being British, I thought that would be a fun connection as well. So I'm going to recommend a lesser seen Hitchcock train movie. It's an early one called The Lady Vanishes, and it's a really fun Hitchcock movie. It's more comedic than you'd think from his later stuff. It's also got like a little bit of a mystery and suspense, and but takes place mostly on a train and is very fun. So that's my second recommendation here.
I love that. I love trains. Always been a big train guy. So whenever we can bring trains into the mix, I'm down for that. Yeah. Sweet. I think my next pick will be, I'm going to go with another movie. Probably in the same sort of like realm of what some would call a pretentious film, but that's okay, right? There are a lot of great movies out there about magic, about how wonderful the world of magic can be. You might be thinking, Raph, what great pretentious magic movies are there out there? I am, of course, talking about Now You See Me. Yes. Or you could go Now You See Me Too, which features Daniel Radcliffe.
That's true. Ooh. We should watch that tonight. That'd be fun.
Now You See Me?
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah.
In a joke that I realized was only funny to me because I wasn't like sharing it with the world. There was a period of time where whenever I was on a flight and Now You See Me was available for watching, I would watch it. And then I realized after like the 5th time of doing that and not sharing it with the world, I was like, I'm just like torturing myself watching this movie over and over again every time I'm on a plane. Why am I doing this?
It's always funny when you have the jokes or like the competitions with yourself that no one else is a part of, and you're like, well, okay.
Yeah.
This is funny for me and me only.
This is only funny for one person, and it's not even funny for me anymore. It's just like it's just mean to myself.
So now that the world knows that you watch it on a plane, will you continue to watch it on a plane, or have you relieved yourself of that obligation?
Maybe I'll bring it back. I don't know if this like show has a big enough following where I'll like do that and someone will be like, "Oh my God, you're Raph from the Canon. You're watching Now You See Me on this JFK to Phoenix flight." Like, that's amazing. So
just
I don't know if I'm gonna
just
keep
let
it
me and Brian know. Yeah. Just and we'll appreciate it.
Maybe that will be like my running joke on Twitter, and I'll build a following of just people who like know me as the guy who watches Now You See Me on every flight.
Yeah.
There you go.
Great thing to be known for.
I love it. All right, my last one. So I did movie, I did TV show. I'm going to go with book, because those are basically the 3 things I love. I mean, I guess I could go dog. That's another thing I love, but that doesn't make sense. So
recommend a dog.
Well, this dog right here in the frame.
Yeah.
Just lounging out, full genitals up in the air. Classic dog.
We love it.
Anyway, so this is another weird connection. So there are 5 Gryffindor first year boys. You got Harry, Ron, Neville, Seamus Finnegan, and Dean Thomas. The actor who plays Dean Thomas much later plays the role of I don't remember his character's name. His name is Alfred Enoch. That's the actor. He is in kind of the primary character or one of the primary characters in the Shonda Rhimes show, How to Get Away with Murder. And when that premiered, everyone was like, whoa, that's Dean Thomas. Like, it's like, where's this guy been? Because I'm pretty sure he's like the one American actor that went.
Yeah.
I think he's American. Anyway, Shonda Rhimes show, How to Get Away with Murder, dramatic in a great way. Viola Davis is a treasure. And you all should read her memoir called Finding Me. You will cry many times, as I did. It is 5 stars, no notes. This woman came from severe poverty in a small all-white town. So just like there's a lot there. There's a lot that she's gone through. And her memoir, like, despite I really love a celebrity memoir. I particularly love when the celebrity narrates their celebrity memoir. I'm a big believer in that you should always listen if the writer is narrating, you should listen because they're going to give you their voice as well as their heart and their brain and their history. But she talks a lot about just her journey through navigating the world, coming out of poverty, being the only Black family in her town, going ultimately to Juilliard, and then learning like how art is so framed from like a white Western perspective and how there's so much more world out there, and using the resources she has been able to get to bring up art of other cultures, primarily Black or African culture. Just there is so much there. She is a phenomenal woman, and everyone should read her memoir. That's Finding Me by Viola Davis on this Harry Potter episode of the Canon.
I love it. I've heard great things about that memoir. It's been on my reading list for a while. So another reason to bump it up.
Yeah, I rented it from the library and had to wait like 12 weeks. I was like, I need this memoir, but
worth it.
Very worth it. Yeah.
All right. Well, my last recommendation here is going to be the Perks of Being a Wallflower movie. So you've got the Emma Watson connection. It's also based on a novel and coming of age story.
Can I have my recommendation 4, which is the book of Perks of Being a Wallflower?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. A little bonus rec.
A little bonus rec. It's on your shelf right there. Movie is quite good. Book is phenomenally better.
So the movie, yeah, I've not read the book actually, but
it's right there.
I love this movie. I feel like it does a really good job of framing these high school characters. The David Bowie song that's used is just a phenomenal needle drop. And yeah, I really like that movie, and neat to see Emma Watson probably had the most successful post Harry Potter career, I would say.
Yeah.
Of the 3 main ones. But I know Daniel Radcliffe's done some like stage stuff as well, so it's like, what do you count as success?
And I think Emma Watson
she's still a phenomenally big movie star.
Yeah. I think Emma Watson also, just from a public persona, doing a lot of work with women's rights type of campaigns. I mean, she spoke at the UN, things like that. So I think that she's had a great public image outside of film. Also, Perks of Being a Wildflower has another Wizarding World tie-in. The questionable Ezra Miller is in both the movie of Perks of Being a Wallflower and the first Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movie.
Yeah. I did not know that.
There you go. Have you seen Fantastic Beasts? Either of them?
No, I've barely seen all of the Harry Potter movies.
That's
I have
fair.
not, yeah.
That's
Fantastic
fair.
Beasts
Okay.
is not on my radar.
Oh gosh, Newt Scamander, but who plays him? Brian.
The Eddie Redmayne.
Eddie Redmayne plays Newt Scamander, who is probably the pinnacle example of a Hufflepuff, and the good things about being a Hufflepuff.
And okay, Eddie Redmayne gives me the heebie-jeebies, but we don't necessarily need to get into that right now. That's a me problem.
There's something visual about him that I get what you're saying. I also think he's quite handsome, so it's really weird when someone is like both handsome and gives you heebie-jeebies. But
yeah,
that's my own cross to bear.
Have you guys seen the so Fantastic Beasts? That's the prequel series, and then there's the sequel Broadway play,
Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Yeah,
I have not seen it. I've read it. This like stage script is in book form. Funny. So in 2016, Brian did a half Ironman.
nice.
No big deal. Which takes like a very long time.
Yeah,
And we were driving out to the beach, and Brian found a half Ironman on the way to the beach that he did. So like we left a little bit early. And
Damn.
it's like it almost, I mean, they cut you. I know, he's such a badass. It was in Asheville too, which is so hilly, but like,
Very hilly.
yeah, he did it. So anyway, they give you 8 hours to do this Ironman or half Ironman, excuse me. Brian, your time was like 7:25, I think.
It was 8:25, something
8:25.
like that.
I don't remember. He had fallen
Crushed
like
it.
a week before, so he was like
Yeah.
limping, but he did great. Anyway,
Yeah.
I brought Harry Potter and the Cursed Child in my hammock because, like, well, I'm going to read while you're doing this race. You get through the book really quickly when it's a screenplay. Like, it's written like with stage direction and stuff instead of being like a novel. So I read it twice
Nice.
while I was waiting for you. Anyway, that's my story. But I have not seen the play. They're in theory making a movie of it.
Yeah,
Or
I've heard the
show
play
of
is.
it or
I've heard
something.
people enjoy the play. You guys should take a trip up to New York. We'll hang
Is
out.
it? Ooh.
Sounds
Well,
great.
I almost bought
Well, you guys
plane
can see
tickets.
the play.
Yeah. Well, I almost bought Brian up to the plane, and we'll hang out.
Yeah.
Got you tickets to the Sufjan Stevens musical that's in New York right now.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, let's just go up to New York, but everything is double when you have to pay for childcare
Yeah.
or bringing your kids. But I wouldn't do that. I really like my kids. I feel like this episode is making it I don't. I think they're
No.
wonderful.
I think
Just find-
everyone knows that you love your kids.
Yeah, just keep talking about taking vacations without them.
Without
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, cool. For my final recommendation, I'm just gonna go with the super basic, obvious choice. I'm gonna recommend what is probably my favorite movie of all time. It's not the best movie ever made. Well, you know what? Screw that. It is for me. It's the best movie ever made. Also directed by Chris Columbus. Home Alone is like totally my jam. That is a movie that I've probably recommended on the show before, but it really just like informed like so much of my upbringing and sensibilities around like art and family and pop culture and like all of that stuff. I absolutely adore that movie, and I will take any opportunity I can to recommend it. So Home Alone,
Great.
That's my last one.
Love
Watch
Home
it.
we
if you
also
haven't.
watched that with a live score.
We did.
Is that John Williams too?
That is John Williams too. Yeah, that's a great score.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's actually funny how you talked about your like teenage Gryffindor ways. I can see how being a big fan of Home Alone could lead you into like wholesome shenanigans.
The Home
Did you
Alone
try to
to
make, like,
Gryffindor pipeline.
That into the Boondocks.
Yeah.
Did you do like the Rube Goldberg? Thank you. That type of device of like trapping home invaders into your room.
No, so going back to the Captain Underpants thing, I was like far too dumb to be able to put any of those together.
What to do with Captain Underpants?
Well, just like my
do only dumb kids read Captain Underpants? No.
Yeah, it was for us dumb kids, you know.
Oh gosh, Raph. I don't think you're dumb. You made a whole podcast.
Yeah,
no podcaster is dumb. Everybody who does podcasts is wildly smart. Right?
All right, let's
Oh,
run through our
no.
recommendations one
Okay. All right.
one last time so that we can avoid addressing that.
The giant elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Yep. I was
Same
going to
order.
say
You wanna
who
go
that
first,
elephant
Hannah?
is shaped like, but I'll hold my
Yeah.
tongue. Tell you guys offline.
Yeah. Everyone can imagine their own elephant,
Yep.
we'll say. All right, cool. Yeah, let's run through recommendations one last time before we say final goodbyes. Same order. Just run through them quickly in case anyone, wants to write them down before
All right.
we get
We
out
got
of here.
the fantastic movie A Fish Called Wanda. Brian. Or am I doing all three of mine?
All three.
All three. I'm so sorry. A Fish Called Wanda. We got the TV show Community, and we got the memoir by Viola Davis called Finding Me.
I've got the movie Alice, directed by Jan Svankmajer. I've got The Lady Vanishes, and I've got The Perks of Being a Wallflower movie as well.
And book.
And book. Bonus rec.
And book.
I've got
I
the...
have not read the book. I can't recommend the book.
Of course you can. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm recommending the Captain Underpants book series by Dav Pilkey. Didn't want to go by Dave, but good for you, guy.
Mhm.
I've got the incredible film Now You See Me, or you can go Now You See Me 2 if you want to see Daniel Radcliffe in the world of magic once again. And I've got Chris Columbus's Home Alone because it's the best. Brian, Hannah, thank you guys so much for joining. This has been an absolute blast. It's been so great talking all things Harry Potter with both of you guys. I'm so happy that we had some serious Harry Potter fans on to talk about this. Listeners, as we mentioned at the front of the episode, What a Pick is their show. It's very awesome. If you want, more great movie talk, if you want to hear about Hannah and Brian's thoughts on the Sight and Sound Top 100 list, a lot of really cool insight, good banter, some cool guests from time to time, including me.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. But it is a great show. Where can folks find you if they want to follow, listen, all of that good stuff?
Yeah. So you can search for What a Picture on your podcast platform of choice. We've also got a website. It's whatapicturepod.com. So you can check us out there. I'm on some social media. Letterboxd would be the main place to find me. Blue Sky, if you're on that, I am on Blue Sky as well. So yeah, those are I guess the primary places. Yeah, check out the pod. We have a lot of fun doing it.
Those are the official places. I'm technically on Instagram, but I don't post about movies. I do post about books and Harry Potter and my dogs and my kids and baking and working out and basically everything other than movies. And you can also find me probably reading Harry Potter or thinking about Harry Potter or listening to Harry Potter or watching Harry Potter or looking at Harry Potter memes or dressing up like a Death Eater or drinking butter beer or teaching my dog Avada Kedavra to play dead. The normal stuff. Yeah. I just love, Harry Potter is so basic, and that just means it's good. Basic isn't always bad.
No.
Basic means that you're going to find a lot of people who like the same things you like, and that's great.
It's awesome to enjoy things. It's awesome to enjoy Harry Potter. Also, it's awesome to enjoy What a Picture. I think I was shortening it to What a Pick.
That's fine. That's Brian's tag or Instagram handle.
Right?
So
definitely, you can find them on any podcasting platform. Check out the website. Great show. You can obviously find us here at the Canon wherever it is that you're listening to us. Spotify, Apple, yikes, knocking my microphone over, Google Play. We're on YouTube now, which is super fun. You can obviously find us on the website proper, screenagewasteland.com, and along with all of the other stuff that we've got going on there, tons and tons and tons of great write-ups. I don't know that we have any specific themes for August, but there's a ton of great stuff. Always love chatting with everyone in the comment section on, Instagram, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Letterboxd, all of that good stuff. Continue to reach out. Let's keep these amazing movie conversations going. Hannah, Brian, thank you both again for joining. This has been so much fun. Next week, we've got more Harry Potter talk. We mentioned it. We're going to be talking Prisoner of Azkaban. I don't think I've seen it, but I am excited to check it out. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. I hope, listener, that you are as well. Hannah, maybe we can change your mind about that movie in particular with that episode.
I'm open to thinking about potentially, possibly, maybe thinking about changing my mind. Gary Oldman is phenomenal, and
that's a start.
That's a start. He is great. He's great in everything he does.
Brian, I don't know where you stand on Prisoner of Azkaban, but
we have a party line. We have a household decision on where we stand. Careful, Brian.
I feel like I can't say no.
No, you can say how you feel. I'm sorry.
I like the movie. I don't have any like really strong attachment to that particular book like Hannah does, but I think that movie is quite good. Yeah.
Sweet. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we can, convert Hannah and anyone else who might be a Prisoner of Azkaban doubter out there. But again, I hope, listener, that we see you back there for that episode. And as always, in the meantime, where I'll see you. See you in the wasteland. Take care, everyone. Be good. Stay safe. Talk to you there.